You're watching Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world to hear their views on issues making headlines. I'm Also Young. This year, South Korea celebrates its 60th year of diplomatic relations with the European Union after ties were established in 1953. Relations between the two sides have been deepening and broadening over the decade, from trade ties to like-minded partnership in global governance, as well as innovation and culture. Now, the Slovak Republic is one of the 27 EU member states and celebrates 30 years of friendship with South Korea since 1993. Today, we invite Ján Kuderjavý, Ambassador of Slovakia in Korea, to reflect on the relationship and where it's headed. Very warm welcome to you, Ambassador. Thank you so much for coming to our studio today.
Very good morning.
Right, good morning to you. And well, it's a very momentous year this year in Korea-Slovakia relations. It's 30 years, I believe. And well, what do you think really makes this relationship special, and well, what were some of the key milestones?
Yes, indeed. Mutual diplomatic relations between Korea and Slovakia exist only 30 years. However, our bilateral cooperation has already achieved remarkable progress. And what is special? I think it is economic cooperation in particular. About 20 years ago, some Korean companies noticed Slovakia's strategic position in the heart of European continent and decided to invest in our country. And Slovakia finally became the starting platform for their export to European countries, especially after free trade agreement between the European Union and Korea entered into force back in 2011. And today we've got something like 100 Korean companies represented in Slovakia, including the major ones like Kia Corporation or Hyundai Mobis or Samsung Electronics.
I see. And what do you think are possibly core priority areas that the two countries could work on in order to take the relationship even further?
Okay, so when targeting Korean companies, we are determined to attract and support especially investments with high value added and with innovation potential. And here also I would like to mention that automotive is a key sector in the Slovak industry, as its share represents almost 50%. And here we've got two major priorities. One is focused on production of electromobiles. So we would like to see that Kia, which is the only one Kia throughout all EU countries in Slovakia, can start to produce electromobiles in Slovakia, and we have some promise that it will start either this year or next year. And second one is we would like to attract attention of Korean companies which are focusing on production of batteries for these electric cars. And a part of automotive, we are specialized. We would like to find in Korea partners also in other sectors, especially robotics and artificial intelligence, nanotechnologies, biotechnology, material research, digitalization, and sustainable energy, including hydrogen.
I see. That's a lot of very high-tech areas as well, so it should be a very good win-win relationship for two sides. And well, what role do you think South Korea can play with its global pivotal state vision now? South Korea is trying to play a more active role in the global community, and it's actually even tried to increase its relations with EU countries, and it's established a NATO presence as well in Brussels. So what kind of role do you see South Korea playing?
I think Korea belongs to 10 or 12 biggest economies in the world. and it owns a lot of high tech, including space technologies, as we saw recently with two launches of Nuri rocket, and second one also putting into orbit the satellite. So second thing, what is I think important in here is that Korea adheres to the same value as the NATO and EU countries, and that is, you know, democracy, rule of law, market economy, and respect for human rights. So I believe there is certainly a lot of space for Korea to play more active role on a global political scene in issues like global security issues, environmental policies, public health, or development assistance. And I think recent adoption by your government of Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy is a very positive step in this respect.
I see. And well, in terms of Korea trying to play a bigger role in global security as well, I believe our defense ministers met last year and they agreed on closer cooperation going forward. And well, what were some key outcomes of that meeting?
You are right. That meeting between our defense ministers was, in fact, end of November last year. So it was recently. And a major outcome is that we managed to sign memorandum of understanding, which is putting closer cooperation between our two defense ministries. And one of the issues which were on the table was also possibility of Korea's participation in modernization of our Air Force. And here I would like to mention that war in Ukraine opened eyes of many people in Europe, and it showed also that independence and freedom should not be considered as something automatically granted. And we all have to strengthen the NATO collective defense. And here Slovakia aims to modernize both armed forces and air force, as we are a landlocked country and we do not have our navy. And Slovakia already signed a couple of contracts, and in Air Force with the United States for delivery of F-16 fighters, and definitely we need also training aircraft to support all of this. And that's why we are in contact also with the Korean Defense Ministry.
I see. And well, when it comes to South Korea's own security, of course, the biggest issue there is North Korea and how to deal with that. And well, Slovakia is actually one of the few countries in the world that have diplomatic relations with Pyongyang. And of course, it's also a country that's experienced division, though on vastly different terms, of course. So what is your perspective on the issue of initiating diplomacy with North Korea?
Yes. You know, I started my mission here in Seoul at the beginning right at the beginning, from the very day of 2019. And it was in period after the Singapore summit between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim, when hopes of finding solution to the question of denuclearization were rising. Unfortunately, those hopes faded later, end of February of that year. And right now the situation looks not good. You know, I represent a small country, Slovakia, located far away from Korean Peninsula. So I am not supposed to give any kind of lessons or lectures to the local negotiator on this issue. However, what I know for sure, we shouldn't give up our hopes, because miracles happen. And if you look at the history of Europe, where Iron Curtain between East and West was removed as a consequence of decision taken by Mr. Gorbachev and Mr. Reagan. So similarly, I think I want to keep the hope that one day, when situation is ripe enough, the process of denuclearization would start here. And for that purpose, of course, consent of parties directly involved, that is South and North Korea, but also major powers behind, is needed.
Right, and well, diplomacy and economic relations aside, we're hoping for more cultural exchanges between South Korea and Slovakia as well. And Slovakia is known to have a very uniquely beautiful landscape, you know, large rivers, impressive mountains, and well, for any South Korean tourist visitor looking to go to Slovakia, what would you recommend, Ambassador? And how do you see interpersonal relations also developing between the two sides?
Okay, so it is my pleasure here to invite Korean tourists after that long COVID period to see beauties of Slovakia. Slovakia is very much a hiking country. 70% of territory of my country is covered with mountains. And these mountains are higher than those here in Korea. So my favorite, and I would say that there are many hiking trails in our mountains, and my favorite is trail is about 100 kilometers long. It's situated in the central Slovakia in the range of mountains which is called Low Tatras. And it is in altitude in between 1600 and 2000 meters, so you are constantly in a rather high altitude, and it takes about 4 days when you start until you finish this trip. And from the top of those mountains, you can have magnificent views, and you see beautiful nature everywhere around with very rich flora and fauna. But there are other tourist attractions as well, and these comprise beautiful castles, unique wooden churches, which are part of UNESCO World Heritage. And we've got, except of these churches, we've got 7 other which belong to UNESCO World Heritage sites. And there are many spas with mineral waters, as well as cave systems which belong equally to World Natural Heritage.
Oh, I see. Well, I've been to Slovakia, of course, but I've also had the pleasure of sampling some of your liquor as well. That was wonderful stuff. And of course, you'll be bringing in more Slovakian snacks and food as well. Any exciting developments on that front?
Well, what is typical for Slovakia in beverages, it's well, kind of beverage which is called Tatra tea. Tatra, I mentioned previously, it's a range of mountains in Slovakia, and it's something very typical because it's a kind of liquor which is made up from local berries and plants. And a part of that, what is typical food, it's called, well, it's quite complicated. In Slovak it's called brinzové halušky, but it's a sort of sheep cheese dumplings. So that's something what is very typical.
I see. Well, this is where we'll have to wrap up today, Ambassador. But thank you so much for your insights and for your time this morning. Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you also to our viewers for tuning in. Global Insight will be back on Thursday, South Korea time. Do join us then. Bye.